we're going to have I guess the National Organization of Women and the UN Women's Society or whatever have planned I think it's from the 7th to the 9th of October. There's going to be this big worldwide march for women's rights and women's issues and abortion and this and everything else, all things women. So really what it is, it's sort of what I call tilling the fields. They're seeding sort of this sentiment so that when they get to that point prior to the November elections, it'll be like, okay, ladies, make sure you get out there and vote, because if you don't go out there and vote, then, abortion is going to be what it is, and women are losing rights left and right. And so therefore, if you don't get out there, it's going to be a failure on the part of women, because women are the ones who basically decide elections, really, since you could say 1920s, but certainly since the post-sexual revolution generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's be clear about what that is. When you talk about the National Organization for Women, you talk about these women's marches. These are pro-abortion movements at large. These are not movements that care about women, or you wouldn't have seen the heads of the National Organization for Women shaking hands with the likes of Bill Clinton, who was a total womanizer. It's not about that. It's all about politics. It's all agenda-driven. It's, the left-wing agenda at its best. And now somehow, they'll talk about equal pay, which we've dissected on this show, which we know that's a huge myth, the way that it's presented by the left. They'll talk about, women's rights being confined to their ability to murder a baby in late stages. And that's where it ends, really. They don't really talk about issues that really stand to benefit women. And it's a pro-hyper promiscuity culture that they're seeking to, embellish and add to. So that let's be clear about what that is. And I think you're right. I think they're gearing up right now for a midterm election season that they need to rely heavily on the recent abortion ruling, which has been distorted. They have tried to make it, sound like abortion has been removed, that it's now illegal, when instead what really happened is this became a states' rights issue, which is where it should have stood all along. So I think you're 100% right. The manipulation that's going on right now with respect to women at large. And you're going to see, by the way, Rollo, you're going to see, just quickly, women's magazines picking up on all of that. I mean, this is just going to become a thing. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, it started, I was going to say, it was Elizabeth Warren. It started really in, I think it was late March or early April, when she started talking about how they really needed to lean on President Biden for student debt consolidation or student debt forgiveness. And when you look statistically, I've had these discussions, by the way, with George Gammon on Valuetainment of all places too. We were talking about how the student debt forgiveness was actually part of the Biden platform, back in 2020, and he never really made good on it. Well, the reason for that is because they were reserving that for the midterm elections. Mm-hmm. And so you've got Elizabeth Warren, who is, I still have the tweet. I could probably go dig it up for you. But she was saying, we really need to lean on President Biden. This is March of this year. We need to lean on him to make good on his campaign promises of debt forgiveness, because it gives women a fair shake, or women a fair start. And the reason why she's bringing that up is because at least 2/3 of student debt in the United States is held by women, because women enroll and graduate at much higher rates than men do. So it is last I counted, it was, I believe, at $1.7 trillion was the debt. And so that was a big deal. And I jumped all over that because I knew that was coming. And so that happened right before, literally 2 weeks before the quote unquote SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, leak about how they were going to rule on Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. And it was a leak, and everybody was losing their minds, but they knew it was coming. I mean, if you go and you listen to the rhetoric of that time, you listen to Kamala Harris, you listen to Elizabeth Warren, you listen to AOC. During that time, during April to about May, when the leak hit, this was before the ruling, they were just losing their minds, because they knew that was the plan. They knew that was the narrative that they were going to go with. Sure as hell, that as soon as June rolls around, like you said, they kick it back to the states. It's not a federal thing now; it's back to the states. That's when you see companies like Tesla and Morgan Stanley, Starbucks, Amazon are all coming up with these plans to say, ladies, if you happen to live in a non-abortion state and there's another abortion state that's next to you, we're going to give you up to $4,000 in a passport so that you can cross state lines, go have an abortion in another state, and then come back and go back to work for Amazon or for Morgan Stanley or whoever is offering the thing for you, offering the stipend to you, as if that's a benefit, part of the benefits package if you happen to have a vagina and you work for those companies. So the fact that they were already planning and preparing to do that prior to the ruling even coming down, that lets you know that the narrative, the fix is already in, that the narrative is already there. So when I was looking at that, I'm like, okay, now we're back to the gender war. Now we're back to gender politics, because that's how they're going to get the ladies out to the polls in November. And I made this prediction back in March. I said, you're going to see it ramp up right around the end of August, maybe into the middle of September. And here we are. We're making villains of incels. We've also got the young lady. I'm sorry if I'm preempting you here, but you're probably going to talk about the young lady in.
Oh, did we lose him? Okay, we're going to get him back. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to that, but the idea that women's issues are an international crisis and not just an American crisis is going to ramp up right up until we get to the point where we're at about November 8th. And then right around November 9th, November 10th, all of it goes away.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. You were talking about those companies that are going to great lengths now when it comes to abortion and female employees. It's interesting. A lot of those companies didn't step up to the plate when people were forced to get an experimental vaccine that their own doctors advised against. They weren't rushing to make arrangements for those people to keep their jobs. Fascinating to watch politics on display. If you want to watch the full episode, you're going to click right here. And if you want to ask me a question one-on-one, you want to do a one-on-one FaceTime with a group of your friends, whatever you want, you need to download Connect right now. Click right here and let's get talking.